Okay, so I'm going to take you through slowly some of the details within these lines at the end of Act 2, Scene 2 that are so crucial in revealing the psychological damage that the murderer is promising to create um, in the mind of Macbeth and even in the mind of Lady Macbeth. Firstly, she says, he says, "Methought I heard a voice cry, 'Sleep no more. Macbeth does murder sleep.'" Now, this is a real important linguistic feature throughout the play, the motif of sleeplessness, something that keeps coming up in the play in over and over again. And it combines the symbolism of light and dark. If we think of light as symbolic of moral goodness and dark as evil, sleeplessness then is a confusion of the two and of the confusion of morality that the play is describing, the impact of what's foul seeming fair and what's fair seeming foul. If you're sleeplessness, you're mixing those two very clear different categories together. And so that motif is a sign of natural disturbance. It's a sign of um, the order of things being um, destroyed and turned upside down. Importantly, the line, "Macbeth does murder sleep," sorry, gives us this sense of Macbeth destroying the chance of renewal or regeneration. That sleep is the healing part of the day, and it's actually the natural part of a cycle of death and rebirth. And sleep is seen often as death in the language of the play, but here it actually is death. He's killed it off, and with that killing off sleep in his fears, it suggests that he has ruined the chance for his mind to ever recover from the trauma that he has just enacted and carried out. He calls it the innocent sleep, sleep that knits up the ravelled sleeve of care. And this phrase here you can see in the text, the ravelled sleeve, the frayed, twisted part of a garment. So it's almost this image here that he uses from textiles, that sleep fixes all of the damage that has been carried out by the day and provides someone with the chance to renew themselves. So here, sleep is personified, knitting up the ravelled sleeve of care, fixing all of the damage that's been carried out during the day. And here he continues this, the death of each day is life. So it's in sleep, all of the traumatic life of the day is killed off. And again, the fact that he describes it through death here, even though he's talking about its kind of positive features, suggests he's confusing the boundaries. It suggests his own mental confusion about each of these. It's sore labour's bath. It's the thing that heals you after a difficult day of working. It's the balm of hurt minds, great nature's second course, chief nourisher in life's feast. So it's all of these things that are, in some ways, fixing you or healing you or restoring you in some fashion. They're making you better. And he has ruined the ability to do this. And so is desperately worried about the consequences. Lady Macbeth, obviously, here just doesn't understand what he's talking about, and you can tell the difference between the two of them. What do you mean? She doesn't understand how he can be so traumatized by this horrifying act that he's just committed. And this motif is continued here. Still it cried, "Sleep no more, to all the house Glamis hath murdered sleep." And that's his previous title. And therefore Cawdor shall sleep no more. Macbeth shall sleep no more. And the repetitions here show this sense of madness and fixation. He keeps saying, "Sleep no more, sleep no more, sleep no more." There's a sense of his mind unraveling, like the image that he uses in the previous lines, because of the guilt that he's just committed. And then Lady Macbeth just says, "Who was it that thus cried?" She's in the realm of reality here, whilst he is in the realm of psychological trauma and perhaps hallucination. And then she just says, "Why, worthy Thane, you do unbend your noble strength. You do ruin your noble masculine strength. to think so brain sickly of things, to think in such an unhealthy way about what you've just done. And so again, she implies that his mental trauma is a kind of weakness and a lack of masculinity in this section. And then another of the really important motifs crops up in her lines first. She says, "Go get some water and wash this filthy witness from your hand." This filthy witness is obviously the bloody proof of the action that he's carried out. The hand washing motif, though, here is used to show how she overestimates the ease with which this can be eradicated, the sense of guilt, or overcome. She just says, well, quickly just wash the blood from your hands, as if that's going to be enough to get rid of this psychological trauma that he seems to be experiencing already. And then she's angry with him for being an amateur, kind of clumsy criminal. Why did you bring these daggers from the place? The fact that he brings the daggers with him, I think, symbolizes his guilt, his sense of not being able to just forget about what he's just done. And then she keeps his details on the plan. They must lie there. Go carry them and smear the sleepy grooms with blood. The language she uses here is suggestive of control. She uses imperatives, orders. They must lie there. Go and carry them and smear the sleepy grooms with blood. But then also she uses this word smear, as if she's reminding Macbeth that he needs to go and cover the daggers with blood and smear it on the sleepy groom so it looks like they're the ones who've killed Duncan. But that word there sounds quite sensuous, as if she's enjoying the thought. But Macbeth here can't bear this thought. I'll go no more. This short sentence gives us that sense of utter disgust with what he's done. And he says, I'm afraid to think what I have done. Look on it again, I dare not. And so here he reveals that he can't bear to think about what he's done. He can't bear to look at it again. And this is something that he deals with all the time in the opening of the play. The idea of actually seeing the act and the deed committed shows us that he's already traumatized by his actions. And Lady Macbeth's deeply annoyed by this. Infirm of purpose, she said, he's weak. Give me the daggers. She seems quite excited by this. And then her language here tells us about her psychology quite revealingly. She says the sleeping and the dead are but as pictures. So they're just images. They're nothing to worry about. It is the eye of childhood that fears a painted devil. So it's the eye of a kid. She's basically accusing Macbeth of being immature. The eye of childhood fears just the image of the devil. It's not really the devil, this murderous scene that he's created. And then her final lines are where she seems most disturbing. If he do bleed, I'll gild the faces of the grooms withal. If the king bleeds, gilding is actually, as you'll see in the lines, is covering things with gold, which is obviously a pun on the king's royal blood. I will gild the faces of his guards with his golden royal blood. I will paint them with this blood. And so this suggests obviously this sense of pleasure that she's taking in constructing this image of their guilt. And that's what she says in the last line, for it must seem their guilt. It would seem appropriate that they are guilty. And then the knocking keeps occurring. There's lots of noises in these scenes, Act 2, Scene 2 and 3, and 2, Scene 1. This knocking is actually Macduff, and it's part of the way that Shakespeare uses stagecraft to create this kind of ominous effect. It's actually Macduff, who in the end is going to be the one who murders Macbeth, knocking on the castle gates. And so there's this suggestion here of foreshadowing that actually Macduff is coming to enact justice on Macbeth. He's coming to fix the criminal act that Macbeth has just carried out. Now, these lines are some of the most powerful in the scene for displaying Macbeth's guilt, but they're complex linguistically. Macbeth says, whence is that knocking? He's traumatized by this noise. How is it with me when every noise appalls me? He can't even understand himself, because even noises in the castle are traumatizing him mentally. What hands are here? He's looking at his own hands and is disgusted by them. He says, they pluck out mine eyes. So again, this horror of the sight of his hands personifies them and shows us that they're actually destroying his ability to see. He's so traumatized by the violence. And then he refers back to this hand washing motif that Lady Macbeth introduces, as if the, um, the quick little bit of water that she suggests earlier on in the scene, go wash your hands, is enough to get rid of. She says that go get some water and wash this filthy witness from your hand. But he refers back to this, saying, will all great Neptune's ocean wash this blood clean from my hand? Will the whole ocean of the world, all of the numerous oceans and seas, well, no. The crime is so big that even the entirety of the world's oceans won't wash them clean. And then he reverses this image. This my hand will rather the multitudinous seas incarnadine. Now, incarnadine means here to turn it a red colour. But actually, the word contains within it carn, which is the Latin stem for body or meat. So there's this really horrifying suggestion of the bloody corpse permeating all the different seas, as if the blood on his hands make the green oceans turn into this one red colour. And this is a really complex language for expressing his idea that the violence that he's just carried out is infectious. So these complex, harrowing thoughts are expressed through the multisyllabic words multitudinous and incarnadine, and show us his fears about the infectious nature of violence, as if the blood that he's just unleashed is going to pollute the ocean and destroy the natural world. It comes back to his speech in Act 1, Scene 7, where he discusses the idea of teaching bloody instructions that return to plague the inventor. If you unleash violence onto the world, it will come back at you in some form. But Lady Macbeth is having none of it again. She said she comes back after having carried out this manipulation of the murder scene, and she says, my hands are of your colour, but I shame to wear a heart so white. So again, she's trying to undermine his sense of bravery here and his sense of masculinity, because she says he looks cowardly in this moment. She then hears a knocking again, and this hand-washing motif is repeated. I hear a knocking at the south entry. Retire we to our chamber. A little water clears us of this deed. How easy it is then. Again, this is a real part of the irony of this, because she massively overestimates how easy it's going to be to recover from this guilt and to recover from this act, because later on in the play she goes crazy. And so here, what we see through this hand-washing motif is her carrying out this sense of this evil act, but in some way doing it with a sense of it being very easy, and that later on is disproven by the events of the play.